The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Have you ever thought why some people enter a room and instantly become the center of attention, even when they are not the most handsome, richest, or powerful person there? There is just something about them, something magnetic. People listen to them more carefully, remember them longer, and slowly become emotionally attached to them without even realizing it. And that is exactly where the real meaning of seduction begins. Most people think seduction is only about romance, flirting, or physical attraction. But according to the Art of Seduction, true seduction is much deeper than that. It is the ability to influence emotions, to create desire, and to make someone emotionally fascinated by your presence. A seductive person does not force attention. They naturally pull people toward them. Think about it carefully. Have you ever met someone who made you feel special just by talking to you? Someone whose confidence, mystery, or energy stayed in your mind for days. That person may not have used beauty alone. They used psychology. Because humans are emotional creatures, we are attracted to people who make us feel excitement, curiosity, validation, or emotional escape from ordinary life. The book explains that seduction begins the moment you understand human nature. People constantly search for something missing in their lives. Some seek attention, some seek adventure, some seek comfort, and others simply want to feel understood. Seductive people recognize these hidden emotional desires and slowly become the answer to them. But here is the interesting part. Seduction is not always loud. In fact, the most seductive people are often calm, patient, and emotionally controlled. They do not desperately chase attention. They create mystery. They know how to speak, how to listen, and most importantly, how to make people feel emotions that they cannot easily forget. And that is why seduction is power, because when you can influence someone's emotions, you can influence their decisions, thoughts, and attachment. Whether in relationships, friendships, business, or social life, the person who understands emotions often becomes the person who controls the connection. But the deeper question is, why are humans so easily seduced in the first place? That is exactly what we are going to understand next. Some people don't need to speak loudly to attract attention. They don't beg for validation, chase approval, or try too hard to impress others. Yet somehow, wherever they go, people naturally gravitate toward them. Their presence feels different. Their confidence feels effortless. And the strange part is, even after they leave, their energy stays in people's minds for a very long time. That invisible power is what the Art of Seduction truly talks about. Most people misunderstand seduction completely. They think it is only connected to beauty, romance, or flirting. But real seduction is psychological. It is the art of influencing emotions, the ability to create curiosity, desire, fascination, and emotional attachment without forcing anything directly. Human beings are naturally emotional creatures. We remember feelings more than facts. We forget words, but we never forget how someone made us feel. And seductive people understand this better than anyone else. They know that attraction is not created by perfection. It is created by emotional impact. Sometimes it is mystery that attracts us. Sometimes it is confidence. Sometimes it is the feeling that a person truly understands us. Seduction works because it touches hidden desires inside human nature. People constantly search for excitement, validation, comfort, adventure, or emotional escape from their ordinary lives. The moment someone makes them feel those emotions, attraction begins growing automatically. And this is why seductive people often appear calm and patient. They are not desperate for attention because desperation destroys attraction. Instead, they create space for curiosity. They know when to speak and when to remain silent. They understand that emotional control is more powerful than emotional reaction. The book explains that seduction is happening everywhere around us, not just in relationships. In social media, business, politics, friendships, and even daily conversations, people constantly influence emotions to gain attention and trust. The people who understand human psychology often become the people who naturally stand out from the crowd. But seduction also has a dangerous side. because when someone gains control over emotions, they also gain influence over decisions and attachment. And that is why understanding seduction is not only about attracting others, it is also about protecting yourself from emotional manipulation. To truly understand this power, we first need to understand one important thing: why humans are so deeply controlled by desire itself. There is a reason why certain people become unforgettable. Even years later, their presence still lingers in the minds of others. It is not always because they were beautiful, successful, or powerful. Sometimes it was simply the way they made people feel. A single conversation with them felt exciting. Their attention felt addictive. Their energy created emotional chaos and curiosity at the same time, and without realizing it, people slowly became emotionally attached to them. This is where the art of seduction reveals one of its most powerful ideas. Not all seducers are the same. Some seducers attract people through charm, others through mystery, some through confidence, while others through emotional intensity. Every seductive personality has its own strategy, its own psychology, and its own way of pulling people in emotionally. Take the charmer, for example. Charmers make people feel important. They listen carefully, avoid unnecessary conflict, and create comfort around themselves. People feel emotionally safe with them, which naturally creates attachment. Then comes the coquette, one of the most dangerous types. The coquette creates attraction through uncertainty. They give attention one moment and distance the next. And because humans always desire what feels difficult to obtain, people become obsessed trying to win their validation. Then there is the ideal lover. This type studies people deeply and becomes exactly what the other person secretly desires. They understand fantasies, insecurities, and emotional needs better than most people understand themselves. That is why being around them feels almost magical. The book also talks about the rake, a personality driven by intense passion and bold desire. Rakes make people feel desired in a way they may have never experienced before. Their confidence feels fearless, and that emotional intensity becomes highly attractive. And finally, there are natural seducers, people who appear playful, innocent, spontaneous, and emotionally free. They remind others of emotions they lost while growing up. Around them, people feel alive again. The interesting part is that these seductive personalities still exist everywhere today. In celebrities, influencers, leaders, and even ordinary people. Some attract through confidence, some through mystery, and others through emotional understanding. But no matter the type, every seducer understands one important truth. Humans are not controlled by logic nearly as much as they are controlled by emotion. And the person who controls emotions often becomes the person who controls attraction itself. Confidence is one of the most seductive qualities a human being can possess. Not loud confidence, not the type that constantly seeks attention or tries to prove superiority. Real confidence is quiet, it is calm. It is the ability to remain emotionally controlled while everyone else reacts emotionally around you. And strangely, that kind of energy naturally attracts people without needing to force anything. Think about the people who leave the strongest impression in a room. Most of the time, they are not talking the most. They are not desperately trying to impress everyone. Instead, they seem comfortable with themselves. Their body language feels relaxed, their words feel intentional, and their presence creates a sense of stability. That emotional control becomes magnetic because most people internally struggle with insecurity and self-doubt. The art of seduction explains that confidence works because humans are naturally drawn towards certainty. People want to feel emotionally safe around someone who appears grounded and self-assured. The moment a person constantly seeks approval, over-explains themselves, or acts desperate for validation, attraction immediately weakens. Desperation creates pressure, while confidence creates curiosity. But confidence is not only about words. In fact, seduction often happens silently. Eye contact, posture, facial expressions, tone of voice, and emotional reactions communicate far more than conversation itself. A person who maintains calm eye contact without nervousness instantly appears more powerful. A slow and controlled voice sounds more attractive than rushed speech. Even silence, when used correctly, can become seductive because it creates mystery and tension. The book also suggests that emotionally reactive people lose their seductive power very quickly. The moment someone becomes overly angry, needy, jealous, or emotionally unstable, they lose control over their image. Seductive people understand the importance of emotional discipline. They do not reveal everything instantly. They remain composed even under pressure, and that emotional balance makes others admire them unconsciously. This is why many charismatic leaders, celebrities, and influential personalities appear so attractive to people. Their confidence creates emotional impact. It gives the impression that they understand themselves deeply, and humans naturally admire people who seem internally strong. In the end, confidence is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself. Because the moment you stop chasing attention and become comfortable with your own presence, people begin noticing you differently. And sometimes, the most seductive thing a person can do is simply remain calm while everyone else seeks validation. One of the fastest ways to lose attraction is becoming completely predictable. The moment people feel they have fully understood you, the excitement slowly disappears. Mystery dies, curiosity fades, and emotional intensity becomes ordinary. That is why the Art of Seduction describes mystery as one of the most powerful psychological weapons in human attraction. Human beings are naturally curious creatures. We are emotionally drawn toward things we cannot completely explain or fully possess. The unknown creates tension inside the mind. It forces people to think, imagine, and emotionally invest their attention. And seductive people understand this psychology extremely well. Think about it carefully. Why do certain people stay in our minds longer than others? Often it is because there are unanswered questions about them. Their emotions are difficult to read. Their actions are not entirely predictable. They reveal themselves slowly instead of exposing everything at once. That uncertainty creates fascination. Most people make the mistake of revealing too much too quickly. They constantly explain themselves, overshare emotions, and become fully available from the beginning. But when there is no mystery left, there is nothing for the imagination to explore. Seductive people do the opposite. They understand the power of absence, silence, and emotional restraint. Sometimes replying less creates more emotional impact than replying too much. Sometimes disappearing for a while creates stronger curiosity than constant presence. This does not mean playing childish games. It means understanding that emotional space allows attraction to grow naturally. People value what feels rare, not what feels endlessly available. The book explains that mystery also creates fantasy. And fantasy is incredibly powerful because the human mind often falls in love with imagination more than reality itself. When people cannot fully understand someone, they begin creating stories about them inside their own minds. They project fantasies, desires, and emotional expectations onto that person. That psychological process deepens attraction even more. This is why many celebrities, influential figures, and charismatic personalities carefully protect parts of their private lives. The less people know, the more curious they become. Mystery keeps attention alive. But true mystery is not pretending to be cold or emotionless. It is about maintaining depth, not revealing every thought instantly, not making your entire life completely predictable. Seductive people understand that attraction grows strongest in emotional tension, curiosity, and uncertainty, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone is just enough attention to make them interested, but not enough certainty to make them lose curiosity. Every human being wants to feel important. No matter how confident someone appears on the outside, deep inside, most people crave attention, appreciation, and emotional validation. They want to feel seen. They want to feel understood. And according to the Art of Seduction, the people who master this emotional need gain extraordinary influence over others. One of the biggest misconceptions about attraction is that people fall for appearances alone. In reality, many people become emotionally attached because of how someone makes them feel about themselves. A seductive person understands this deeply. Instead of trying too hard to impress others, they focus on making others feel valuable, interesting, and emotionally special. Think about the conversations that stay in your memory for years. Usually, they are not the ones where someone talked endlessly about themselves. They are the moments where someone listened carefully, understood your emotions, and made you feel genuinely important. That emotional experience creates connection faster than beauty or status ever can. The book explains that seductive people are often exceptional listeners. They observe body language, insecurities, emotional patterns, and hidden desires. They notice the things others ignore, and because most people rarely feel truly understood in daily life, this kind of attention becomes incredibly powerful. But there is another psychological reason why validation works so strongly. Human beings constantly battle insecurity. Some people doubt their appearance, some doubt their intelligence, and others secretly fear rejection or loneliness. When someone enters their life and temporarily removes those insecurities through attention and emotional reassurance, attachment naturally begins to grow. This is why compliments feel more powerful when they seem personal and genuine instead of generic. A seductive person does not simply flatter everyone the same way. They make people feel uniquely valued. That uniqueness creates emotional impact. At the same time, the book warns about the dangerous side of validation, because people who desperately seek approval often become emotionally vulnerable. Manipulative individuals can use attention and emotional understanding to gain control over someone's feelings. They make people emotionally dependent by giving validation strategically. And that is why attention itself is power. The person who controls emotional attention often controls emotional attachment as well. In today's world, this psychology exists everywhere, in relationships, friendships, social media, business, and even marketing. People constantly compete for human attention because attention eventually shapes emotions and decisions. In the end, seduction is not always about making people admire you. Sometimes, it is simply about making people feel deeply understood in a world where most individuals feel emotionally invisible. One of the most dangerous truths about human psychology is that emotions become stronger when they are unstable. When affection feels uncertain, attention becomes inconsistent, and emotional signals become confusing, the human mind often becomes even more attached instead of walking away. This is one of the darker ideas explored in The Art of Seduction, the power of emotional manipulation. Many seductive people use what psychologists call push and pull behavior. One moment they give intense attention, affection, and emotional warmth. The next moment they become distant, cold, or unavailable. This sudden emotional change creates confusion inside the other person's mind. And strangely, confusion often increases emotional obsession because the brain starts searching for answers and emotional certainty. Humans naturally become attached to emotional highs and lows. When someone experiences moments of intense happiness, followed by emotional distance, the mind begins craving the return of that emotional high. Over time, this creates emotional dependency. The person is no longer chasing love itself. They are chasing emotional relief. The book explains that unpredictability is psychologically addictive. Predictable emotions feel safe but ordinary. Unpredictable emotions create tension, excitement, and obsession. That is why emotionally manipulative people often appear incredibly attractive at first. Their behavior keeps others emotionally invested because the brain constantly wonders what will happen next. But this type of seduction can become extremely destructive. Manipulation slowly damages emotional stability. It creates anxiety, insecurity, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion. A person trapped in this cycle may lose confidence while constantly trying to regain validation from the manipulator. And the frightening part is that emotional manipulation exists everywhere today. In relationships, social media interactions, friendships, and even toxic workplace environments, people often use attention strategically to maintain emotional control over others. Sometimes they ignore messages intentionally, create jealousy deliberately, or offer affection only when they fear losing influence. The Art of Seduction does not only reveal how seduction works, it also teaches awareness. because understanding these psychological patterns helps you recognize when emotions are being controlled against you. True emotional connection should create peace, trust, and emotional growth, not constant anxiety and confusion, and that is why emotional intelligence becomes so important. The more aware you are of your emotions, the harder it becomes for others to manipulate them. Sometimes the strongest form of seduction is not controlling another person's emotions, but controlling your own. Before a person even speaks, their appearance has already started communicating something about them. The way they dress, walk, carry themselves, and express emotion silently shapes how others perceive them. According to the Art of Seduction, appearance is not simply about beauty. It is about creating emotional impact. Human beings naturally judge through visual impressions. Within seconds, people form opinions about confidence, status, personality, and attractiveness without hearing a single word. Seductive people understand this psychological reality. They carefully shape the image they present to the world because they know appearance influences emotion long before logic enters the conversation. But the book makes an important point. Seductive appearance is not about perfection. In fact, perfection can sometimes feel cold and intimidating. What truly attracts people is uniqueness, something memorable, a distinctive style, a calm expression, a confident posture, or an energy that feels different from everyone else. Style itself becomes a form of silent communication. The clothes a person wears can suggest mystery, confidence, elegance, rebellion, or emotional depth. Even small details matter. Eye contact, grooming, facial expressions, and body language all shape emotional perception. A relaxed posture often appears more attractive than forced dominance because comfort signals confidence. Voice also plays a powerful role in seduction. A calm, slow, emotionally controlled voice naturally commands more attention than rushed or nervous speech. People are drawn toward those who appear internally balanced. That emotional calmness creates a feeling of stability and power. The book also explains that seductive people understand the importance of creating atmosphere. Their presence feels intentional. They know how to use timing, silence, fashion, and energy to leave emotional impressions on others. Sometimes attraction is created less by what a person says and more by how they make the environment feel around them. Modern society constantly proves this idea. Celebrities, influencers, and public figures spend enormous effort building visual identity because image shapes emotional influence. Humans remember feelings connected to appearance far more than facts alone. But true seductive style is not about copying others. It comes from authenticity combined with self-awareness. When someone becomes comfortable with their individuality, instead of desperately chasing approval, they naturally become more attractive. Because in the end, people are rarely seduced by perfection. They are seduced by emotional presence, confidence, and the feeling that someone possesses a unique energy they cannot easily forget. Words have the power to completely change human emotions. A single conversation can create attraction, trust, fascination, or emotional attachment within minutes. And according to the Art of Seduction, truly seductive people understand that communication is not only about speaking, it is about creating emotional experiences through words. Most people speak only to exchange information. Seductive people speak to create feelings. They know that logic may convince the mind, but emotion captures the heart. That is why certain individuals become unforgettable conversationalists. Their words feel deeper, more personal, and emotionally engaging. One of the strongest seductive skills is storytelling. Humans are naturally drawn toward stories because stories activate imagination and emotion at the same time. A seductive person does not simply describe events mechanically. They create atmosphere, emotion, tension, and curiosity while speaking. This makes conversations feel alive instead of ordinary. Humor also plays an important role. Genuine humor creates emotional comfort and lowers psychological barriers between people. It creates connection naturally because laughter relaxes the mind and makes interactions feel enjoyable. But seductive humor is rarely forced. It feels effortless and emotionally intelligent. The book also highlights the importance of listening. Ironically, some of the most attractive conversationalists are not those who talk endlessly, but those who make others feel heard. Asking meaningful questions, remembering small details, and responding thoughtfully creates emotional intimacy very quickly. People feel deeply connected to those who understand them emotionally. Compliments become powerful as well when they feel specific and sincere. Generic praise often sounds empty, but personal observations make people feel uniquely valued. Seductive people notice emotions, insecurities, and hidden qualities others overlook. That attention creates emotional impact. Tone of voice matters just as much as words themselves. A calm and confident voice creates attraction because it communicates emotional control. Rushed speech often signals nervousness, while slow and intentional speech creates presence and mystery. But perhaps the most seductive communication skill is emotional timing, knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to create emotional tension. Silence itself can become powerful because it allows imagination to grow. In modern life, communication shapes nearly every relationship: friendships, romance, leadership, and social influence. People who understand emotional communication naturally become more magnetic. Because in the end, people may forget exact words over time, but they rarely forget conversations that made them feel deeply alive, understood, or emotionally connected. Human beings are constantly searching for escape. Escape from boredom, routine, loneliness, stress, and the emotional emptiness that slowly grows inside ordinary daily life. And according to the Art of Seduction, one of the most powerful ways to attract people is to become that escape, to make life around you feel emotionally exciting, different, and unforgettable. This is where fantasy becomes incredibly important. Most people do not fall in love with reality immediately. They fall in love with the emotions and imagination connected to a person. Seductive individuals understand this deeply. They know how to create experiences that feel larger than normal life. Around them, conversations feel more intense, moments feel more meaningful, and emotions feel more alive. Fantasy works because the human mind naturally desires what feels emotionally stimulating. Routine slowly weakens attraction because predictability removes excitement. But when someone creates mystery, adventure, spontaneity, or emotional tension, the imagination becomes active. And once imagination becomes involved, attraction grows much stronger. Think about why certain memories stay in people's minds forever. Usually they are not ordinary moments. They are experiences filled with emotion, uncertainty, passion, or excitement. A late-night conversation, an unexpected compliment, a sudden disappearance, or a moment of emotional vulnerability. These things create emotional imprinting because they feel different from everyday life. The book explains that seductive people often become symbols of fantasy. They represent something others secretly crave: freedom, adventure, passion, confidence, emotional intensity. People project their hidden desires onto them and begin associating them with emotional escape from reality. This psychology exists everywhere today. Movies, music, social media, and celebrity culture all depend heavily on fantasy. Influential figures carefully build emotional images that people admire and emotionally attach themselves to. The fantasy itself becomes more attractive than reality, but fantasy can also become dangerous when people completely lose themselves inside illusion. Sometimes individuals fall in love not with the actual person, but with the emotional story they created in their own minds. And when reality eventually appears, disappointment follows. That is why the Art of Seduction constantly returns to one central truth. Emotions are often stronger than logic. Humans want to feel something extraordinary. They crave emotional intensity because ordinary life can sometimes feel emotionally empty. And the people who know how to awaken imagination, excitement, and emotional escape inside others often become unforgettable because they temporarily make life feel more magical than reality itself. One of the biggest reasons people fail at attraction is because they try too hard. The harder someone chases attention, approval, or validation, the weaker their presence becomes. And according to the Art of Seduction, desperation is one of the fastest ways to destroy emotional attraction. Most people unknowingly push others away through neediness. They constantly seek reassurance, overtext, overexplain, and become emotionally available too quickly. Instead of creating curiosity, they remove all mystery. Instead of building attraction naturally, they force emotional pressure onto the other person. And pressure rarely creates genuine desire. Human psychology works in a strange way. People naturally value things that feel rare, calm, and emotionally controlled. But when someone appears desperate for connection, attention, or affection, it signals insecurity. The energy changes completely. Attraction slowly turns into emotional exhaustion. Another common mistake is losing individuality while trying to impress someone. Many people change their personality, opinions, hobbies, or behavior just to gain approval. At first, they think this creates connection, but over time it actually weakens attraction. Why? Because authenticity disappears. Seductive people are attractive partly because they maintain their identity instead of sacrificing themselves for validation. The book also warns against revealing everything too quickly. Oversharing emotions, personal problems, or deep attachment in the beginning often removes emotional tension. Attraction grows slowly through curiosity and emotional discovery. When everything becomes instantly available, excitement fades. Jealousy and emotional reactions create another major mistake. Many people believe emotional intensity will strengthen attraction, but uncontrolled anger, possessiveness, and insecurity usually damage emotional connection instead. Seductive people maintain emotional composure. They do not panic when attention shifts. They understand that calmness creates far more power than emotional chaos. Modern social media has made these mistakes even more common. People constantly seek validation through likes, replies, attention, and instant emotional reassurance. This creates impatience, but genuine attraction rarely grows through constant chasing. It grows through emotional balance, confidence, and self-respect. Perhaps the biggest mistake of all is forgetting self-worth. The moment someone places another person above their own emotional stability, they become vulnerable to manipulation and disappointment. Seduction should never require losing yourself completely. In the end, attraction is not created by begging for attention. It is created by emotional presence, confidence, and authenticity. Because the people who naturally attract others are usually the same people who are not desperately trying to be chosen by everyone around them. The Art of Seduction is a fascinating book because it reveals how deeply human emotions can be influenced. But at the same time, it also raises an important question. When does seduction become manipulation? Because there is a very thin line between creating attraction and controlling someone emotionally for selfish reasons. Seduction itself is not automatically evil. Confidence, charm, emotional intelligence, good communication, and the ability to create strong emotional connections are natural human skills. In fact, these qualities can improve relationships, leadership, friendships, and social interactions in positive ways. The problem begins when emotional influence is used without honesty, empathy, or respect for another person's well-being. Many manipulative people understand human psychology extremely well. They know how to give attention strategically, create emotional dependency, trigger jealousy, or use affection as a form of control. At first, these behaviors may feel exciting or addictive, but over time they can damage emotional health deeply. The victim becomes emotionally confused, insecure, anxious, and dependent on validation from the manipulator. The book indirectly teaches an important lesson. Emotional power comes with responsibility. Just because someone understands attraction does not mean they should use it carelessly. Real emotional maturity means understanding the impact your behavior can have on another person's mind and feelings. Consent and emotional honesty become extremely important here. Genuine connection should never rely on deception or emotional games alone. A healthy relationship is built on trust, respect, understanding, and emotional safety, not constant manipulation and psychological control. This idea becomes even more relevant in modern society. Social media, influencer culture, dating culture, and even marketing often use seductive psychology to control attention and emotions. People are constantly encouraged to chase validation, comparison, and emotional approval. And because humans naturally crave connection, many become emotionally vulnerable without realizing it. That is why self-awareness is powerful. The more emotionally aware you become, the less likely you are to manipulate others or become manipulated yourself. You begin recognizing unhealthy patterns instead of blindly falling into them. In the end, the greatest lesson from the art of seduction may not be about controlling people at all. It may actually be about understanding human nature, understanding desires, emotions, insecurities, and the deep psychological need for connection that exists inside almost everyone. Because true power is not making someone emotionally dependent on you. True power is creating connection without destroying another person's peace, identity, or emotional freedom in the process. In today's world, seduction exists everywhere, far beyond romance and relationships. It influences social media, business, leadership, friendships, marketing, and even personal branding. The art of seduction teaches that the people who understand emotions often become the people who naturally stand out in society. Think about social media for a moment. Millions of people compete for attention every single day, yet only a few truly capture emotional interest. Why? Because attention is not controlled by information alone. It is controlled by emotion. The creators, influencers, and public figures who become unforgettable usually know how to create curiosity, excitement, mystery, confidence, or emotional connection. They understand human psychology better than most people realize. The same principle works in real life. In friendships, people are naturally drawn toward individuals who make them feel understood and emotionally comfortable. In business, charismatic leaders inspire trust because they know how to influence emotions, not just logic. Even in daily conversations, the ability to communicate calmly, confidently, and emotionally can completely change how others perceive you. But perhaps the most important lesson from this book is that seduction begins with self-awareness. Before attracting others, a person must first understand themselves, their insecurities, emotional weaknesses, desires, fears, and behavior patterns. Because people who constantly seek validation from others often become emotionally dependent and lose their sense of identity. True attraction does not come from pretending to be someone else. It comes from emotional control, confidence, authenticity, and understanding human nature deeply. The most magnetic people are usually those who feel comfortable with themselves. They do not desperately chase attention because their presence already carries emotional weight naturally. At the same time, the book reminds us to stay aware of manipulation. Not every charming person has good intentions. Sometimes attraction can blind people emotionally and make them ignore unhealthy behavior. That is why emotional intelligence is so important in modern life. It protects you from manipulation while also helping you build stronger and healthier connections with others. In the end, The Art of Seduction is not just a book about attraction. It is a book about human psychology, emotional influence, desire, and the hidden forces that shape human behavior every single day. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into human nature and psychology, then make sure to like this video, share it with someone who loves psychological books, and subscribe to Richmind Audiobook for more powerful content like this. See you in the next video.